From London, this is the Standard Podcast, and I'm Mark Blunden. Coming up in this episode, how to cope with urban stress on World Mental Health Day. But first,
as a result of that ballot, James Cleverly is eliminated from the contest, and Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick now go forward to the ballot of members.
And then there were two. The Conservative leadership race has been narrowed to Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick, after once favourite James Cleverly was squeezed out to considerable surprise. Badenoch won 42 votes, Jenrick secured 41, but Cleverly took just 37, with 120 Tory MPs having taken part. So what's next? Who's the favourite, and which of the remaining pair is best to hold Sir Keir Starmer to account at the dispatch box? And so what happened to James Cleverly? Was it strategic voting or skullduggery, just sheer bad luck for him, or something else? The Standard's political editor Nicholas Cecil has the details.
Well, this is still quite a big mystery. People are trying to work out exactly what happened. What is clear, it was a massive shock. And the other thing is, what we definitely know is that MPs are the least trustworthy electorate in the world. They're the most fickle. You just cannot rely on that they will do what they say they will do. So the expectation was that James Cleverly would come out tops in this contest. He'd surged in the previous round, almost doubling the number of MPs voting for him, getting 39. And you only need 41 to get into the final two. So literally, all he had to do was get two more. And generally, MPs, because they're thinking about their career prospects in the future, once there's a clear winner, a clear front runner, they tend to kind of increasingly support him or her. But something very strange has happened here. There looks like to be some game playing here, and very much aimed at the outcome of stopping Miss Badenoch getting into the final two. Now, there are two possible ways this was done. One was that James Cleverly's allies thought he was so far ahead that some of them could vote for Robert Jenrick. That would get him into the final two with Mr. Cleverly, and Miss Badenoch wouldn't be there. The other theory is that Mr. Jenrick's camp, or his allies, had backed Mr. Cleverly in the previous round to try and make sure that he got into the final round with Mr. Jenrick himself. So both these strategies aim to get the same outcome, which is stopping Ms. Badenoch getting into the final two. Both these strategies have the same aim, which is to stop Ms. Badenoch getting onto the shortlist of the final two. But someone has clearly miscalculated, and it is always dangerous to play games in these contests, especially when the numbers are so small. And that's how we've ended up with this absolutely startling result, which stunned Westminster last night.
What was the atmosphere yesterday after the names were called in that Commons room? You reported gasps were heard.
Yeah, well, you could actually hear and feel the gasp of surprise. It was so unexpected. It very much looked like James Cleverly had it in the bag, and that he would more likely extend his lead. And it was just a question of whether it was Robert Jenrick or Kemi Badenoch who joined him on the shortlist.
Now, the party members will make the final decision ahead of the 2nd of November. What would you say are the final two's strengths and weaknesses?
Ms. Badenoch has clearly got more stardust. She's got, in a way, more appeal than Robert Jenrick in terms of the way she delivers her message. And she's very bold about that and clear. But she's also the riskier candidate because she does seem to get into trouble. So if you wanted to take a bold bet, then she might be your choice. But everything might come unstuck. Robert Jenrick, he doesn't have as much stardust as Ms. Badenoch. He is very, very focused. He's very hungry for this. And he was the first one out the blocks in the leadership contest. And he's very clear in what you need to do, which is to take on Nigel Farage and woo back voters who left the Tories to vote instead for reform. The question, though, remains, that if it's a contest between Nigel Farage and Robert Jenrick, who's going to be the winner there? And some people would argue that actually there's only going to be one winner there, and that's Nigel Farage. And therefore, you're probably worth having the bigger risk, the bigger bet in going for Ms. Badenoch. Some MPs, like Sir Ian Duncan-Smith, argue that although she's not a Prime Minister currently, she's got the most potential to become a Prime Minister, very much like Margaret Thatcher.
What's your view on who could be best to hold the Prime Minister to account at the Commons dispatch box?
Well, in terms of that, I think Keir Starmer would find Robert Jenrick the easier Tory leader, if he is Tory leader, to go head to in the Commons of the dispatch box. But again, it goes back to this question of risk. Kind of Kemi Badenoch is a hard candidate to oppose, but she may well make more mistakes herself. So if you want to play safe, Robert Jenrick's your safe option, but it might not work. If you're a gambler, then Ms. Badenoch is the person who might be for you.
Let's go to the ads coming up. To mark World Mental Health Day, we're joined by the London founder of the Stress Management Society to talk about his story, urban anxiety, and small steps to help ease the pressures of modern life. Why not hit follow? In the meantime, give us a rating. Just before we get started, part 2 contains themes surrounding mental health that some may find distressing. Welcome back. Now, this World Mental Health Day, we're looking at the impact of stress and anxiety on our lives, where the risks lie, and small steps you can take if you're struggling. Data from the charity Mind shows 1 in 6 people in England report experiencing a common mental health problem, such as anxiety and depression, every week. Now we're joined by Neil Shah, founder and chief de-stressing officer of the Stress Management Society, who first explains why he established the organisation.
I founded the Stress Management Society not off the back of academic or professional experience. It was actually through life experience. 2003, I had a series of life challenges and experiences that led to me ultimately having a breakdown, the depths of which I got to the point where I decided I didn't want to be here anymore. And I took action against that and tried to end my own life. Thankfully, I failed, but it was through the recovery of that experience I recognized actually there really wasn't a lot out there to support people, particularly young people that are struggling with their mental health. And I guess at some stage through the process of recovery, I recognized that I would like to do something to help other people that go through the same kind of thing that I went through. That's why I started the Stress Management Society, to essentially create a happier, healthier, more resilient world. But 2003 was pre-iPhone, pre-smartphone, pre-social media. I never anticipated that things would get more challenging, more demanding, and the issues that I experienced would only affect more and more people as time progressed. So I think what we do now is even more needed than it was when we came into existence. And I think over the last 21 years, we have reached more than 100 million people with the various different campaigns, programs, and projects we've run. Yet it feels like there is still so much work to do.
And would you be comfortable sharing what some of those elements of stress were?
Yeah, I started my first business when I was in my early 20s and basically built it to a very successful business, won the Young Entrepreneur of the Year award, got invited to number 10 Downing Street to have breakfast with the Prime Minister. That was Tony Blair. I'm not proud of that now, but obviously at the time I was young, successful, and basically having a bit of a Wolf of Wall Street existence in many senses of the analogy from the movie. Too much, too young, too quick, went to my head, and I made a number of really bad decisions, which culminated in me ended up having an experience where I ended up losing the business, losing my money, found most of the people I thought were my closest friends turned their back on me. The person I was in a relationship was cheating on me. Like everything that I thought defined me disappeared, disintegrated overnight. And I was left with what I thought was nothing. At that point, when, I've just come from a background of being on top of the world to having nothing, I felt there was no reason left to live. And that's why I ultimately arrived at the decision that I was better off not being here anymore.
And it's World Mental Health Day. What do people contact your society about? And are you seeing any new themes emerging, particularly post-pandemic?
Yeah, 100%. I think one of the biggest things that we're seeing at the moment is a lot of people feeling that sense of loneliness and isolation. I'm a Londoner, born and bred. London was recently voted as the loneliest city on the planet. I kid you not. That's quite a shocking thing to hear, given that there's 9 million of us. Yet you can be in a busy city like London, be surrounded by people and feel completely disconnected, isolated and lonely. It's the difference between lonely and being alone. Being alone is physically there's no one around. Being lonely is a sense of disconnection. I remember reading a study many years ago which is suggesting the vast majority of people in London don't even know their next door neighbours. Britain actually has got a government minister for loneliness. Again, I kid you not on that. And this is getting worse, and it's been progressively getting worse since the pandemic, where more and more people are working from home, working hybrid. The institutions, the establishment that people would frequent, like restaurants, pubs, bars, churches, etc. They're not being utilised anywhere near as much. I remember going to Edgware Road a couple of days ago with my partner and her father, who's over from Ireland. And I remember Edgware Road, no matter what day of the week you go, it's buzzing. It's a hive of activity. People out in restaurants and bars and smoking shisha. Half of the restaurants I remember on Edgware Road don't exist anymore. And I think this is, for me, the biggest concern is it seems like we are moving more towards a digital existence and less human interaction, which if you've come across the research on blue zones, one of the signs of a happy, healthy, long life is people that have that sense of community, that sense of social connection. We need that. And that's definitely one of the primary issues that we're starting to observe happening, particularly in big cities in developed countries.
And could you give us an example of the kinds of calls you're getting from people seeking your help?
Often we're working across organizations and companies, but generally sort of individuals that will recognize the symptoms to their life, like struggling to cope with relationships, work, finances, etc. But ultimately underneath that is that we're so busy and switched on from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to sleep. Most people don't have the time to actually attend to their primary needs, like rest, like eating well, etc. And then when you're stressed, we tend to seek ways to medicate that stress. And often we're trying to escape, and that could be through alcohol, nicotine, doom scrolling on social media, Netflix, etc., etc. And I think this for me is the concern, is nobody has the time to do the things that are actually going to bring about positive mental, emotional and physical well-being.
As you mentioned, in terms of the stresses affecting Londoners, what's your view on why we can seem to have a shorter fuse these days, and what do you think can be done?
It's interesting that a shorter fuse, I was talking to someone about ADHD and this ADHD pandemic that we've got. It's that we are all being trained and programmed to have a tiny attention span. And if things don't happen quickly and it's not delivered in 20 seconds in a bite-sized chunk, we get frustrated because we just haven't got the attention span. This is why, people need apps for mindfulness, which is a bizarre thing to say. It's quite literally the antithesis of mindfulness if you need an app to do it. Because just being present and quiet and in the moment is something that many people are struggling with, particularly those that live in busy, fast-paced cities. And you go on holiday and you spend the first couple of days just trying to switch off and disconnect. And by the time you arrive at that point, you're now starting to get stressed again because you've got to go back home and go back to work. And I think this is, for me, the biggest concern, that from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to sleep, we're plugged into our technology. AI and technology and smartphones and social media can work better, quicker and faster than we can as human beings. So we're constantly trying to keep pace with the pace of life rather than letting our technologies and our modes of communication serve us. We have become slaves to it. There's a dangerous precedent, particularly in the world where AI is really fast starting to get traction, is that we need to be masters of our technology. And most of us aren't. You are a slave to your phone and your email and your social media. And until we can flip that narrative, this is only going to get worse.
And we have to end on a slight uptick in terms of your work and wins. How are you helping people overcome this? And are there maybe a few simple steps our listeners can take if they're having a difficult time?
Absolutely. If you look up the word power in the dictionary, when applied to a human being, it quite literally means the ability to do or act. We're very fortunate in the world that we find ourselves in, is there is more than enough information. Most of us have been exposed to the key messages of things that we can or should do to improve our well-being. Like drinking water, eating fruits and vegetables, getting a good night's sleep, walking and moving in nature. We've all heard that. You can all most people can give me numbers to that. You know, the 2 liters of water a day, the five a day, the 6 to 8 hours of sleep. Whether it's true or not is irrelevant. The fact is, doing these things is going to bring benefit. Challenge is that you can know something and take no action with it. If the word power means the ability to do or act, firstly, exposing yourself to the right information, but more importantly, taking action against it. So as much as I could give you the top 20 things to do to improve your well-being and manage stress, for me, the biggest thing here is action. Choose 3 things that you can do, that you will stick to, you'll make a commitment to, whether that's I'm going to take a 20-minute walk every day at lunchtime, whether that's going to be I'm going to spend 10 minutes sitting by the window looking out on nature, and just allowing my mind to wander, whether it's I'm going to wake up in the morning and write something in my journal for a few minutes, just get thoughts out of my head and put them onto paper. But make that commitment and stick to it for at least 30 days, because 30 days is how long it takes for you to form a new habit and create a new behavior pattern. If you can do that, the chance of long-term benefit is significantly increased. So the key thing here is little by little, a little becomes a lot. You just need to take a few little steps, a few little actions, and over time that can take your life in a completely different direction.
And if you are struggling, there's links to the Samaritans and Mind in this show's notes. And that's the Standard. For the latest news, head over to standard.co.uk. This podcast is back tomorrow at 4 p.m.